I can read now.
Hey, you guys, welcome to another edition of the Daily Reps podcast. I am your host, Eric Cracknell, and I'm excited to bring to you one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, a man who has inspired me greatly throughout the years, who I have always come back to with quotes and things like that. Dr. Bennett, which is to be a professor from the University of North Carolina in Wilmington, where I met him first, and as a writer, should I say international dancer, Dr. Bennett? Yeah, I mean the list goes on and on. So I'm extremely excited for him to take the time out of his day to talk with us, because I think that this is just going to be some very, very valuable information, especially the time that we're in. Again, I don't know about your state, but here in North Carolina, we're about to go on lockdown again. So I just got the news today that we are going to be going remote with our kids when we come back for Christmas. So we know it's been a very difficult time, but especially in the health and fitness industry. And when it comes to health and fitness, this man right now here out with me is the man. There's nobody better than him. So Dr. Bennett, thank you for taking the time to talk with us on the show, and we really appreciate it.
Well, what a pleasure and an honor, Eric. I just this week got off the phone with a former student from Canada. Uh, you guys never disappear. You keep showing up, and that's a great thing when you've been a teaching professional. You know that because I know you keep up with some of your early students.
Yeah.
I don't do Facebook intentionally. My wife says I'd be on it all the time.
Oh yeah.
That's probably true because everybody'd find out where I am. But
Yeah.
oh, I'm excited, and yeah, you go ahead and point us in a direction, and I'll take off.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I've been having a lot of my old students contact me now, and I just think it's a good thing for them. Especially, I was letting you know about the behavior school that I worked at before I came down here, and a lot of those kids don't have mentors in their lives and stuff, and it's good to hear them back and be able to give some advice back to them. And I mean, you're a man that definitely had really grounded me into my education and the importance of being a teacher and a coach, and which has kind of led me down the path that I am now, and I appreciate that entirely. So, there's I talked to Dr. Bennett about it. I just want to let you know about just kind of like there's just so many aspects of Dr. Bennett to dive into right now. But so one place I'd like to start was that Dr. Bennett was the type of teacher that when he came in the room, when he talked, you were just on the edge of your seat, and you were motivated and you were inspired, and it was exciting. And then there was this one day where Dr. Bennett came in there, and he was just kind of seemed like he was tired, or something had been going on, I'm guessing. And I thought to myself, okay, this is the day that Dr. Bennett is not going to be, have that aura about him. And then as soon as I thought that, Dr. Bennett was there. So there's not one day, one time that I had you in there where it was that you weren't giving your all. And yeah, so I always ask this question, Dr. Bennett, with a lot of my people that I have on here. Do you feel like that was something that you were born with, or something that you kind of developed into it? Going after things that you wanted. Another quote, so a quote that I always take from you is that you always talk about, I ask you how you doing, and you say better and better.
Better and better.
You just say there's only two ways you can go, right? And it's always stuck with me, yeah, for my whole life. So, so do you, like, as a young person, Dr. Bennett, do you feel like that was somebody that you were always like that?
I think everybody has that inside of them. It's that word enthusiasm, and the word enthusiasm has a Greek root. The Greek root is entheos, and the entheos to the Greeks meant the God within. So if it was going to be, who's it up to? Thee. And so that being said, I do believe everybody has entheos. I don't believe it develops at the same level with every individual, but the potential is there for it to happen. I've been blessed to teach literally from preschoolers all the way to 94. Nell was my oldest student. And Nell had that at 94, came to George Mason University and would come in and do weightlifting, and she'd go out and hit pickleball and go swimming and did all the dancing. I led all the dancing and aerobics and big band music, and she just ate it up. And I'm going, my gosh, Nell, how do you do that? Well, it was the same answer always, you know, it's that entheos thing that she had lived a great life. And yeah, I'll never forget her. She really motivated me. I think being around people, being around students for 47 years of teaching, literally from preschool through older adults, 4 universities and about 6 public schools, and worked in the State Department for 8 years. And I was really blessed to come across lots and lots of people. I think one of the things that can really motivate people is to look around you and see what it is others are doing, and you go, oh, I don't want to do that behavior, or yeah, I want to do that behavior. But the other side of it is doing it yourself. So if it's going to be, it is up to thee. There's no doubt about it. And I love what Gandhi always said. He said, if you want to be the change, if you want to make change, you need to be the change that you want to see in the world. He slept on a papyrus mat, had plenty of money. He could have had a nice bed and mattress, but he led his people by example. I think as a fitness instructor, director, you lead by example.
Yeah.
But I'll go off on that tangent a little bit.
Yeah. To me, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. I feel the same way, just with the way society is now and things like that, that most people are willing to point that finger instead of doing what's necessary and making the changes themselves. And you know, I always like to talk about it too with my students, is that, you know, if anything, I want to be the role model. You know, people always will say, you know, some of the stuff that I do is crazy, that I get up early that morning and hit the gym and eating like that and stuff like that. And to me, you know, and that's why I felt like that you were somebody that walked the walk, that you weren't just somebody that talked about all those things, but you were embodying those things yourselves. Now, did you teach at the elementary level, Dr. Bennett?
I did. I taught in 6 elementary schools in my career, and 3 middle schools and 1 high school. Was a state school level central office administrator for a while too. I was the youngest in the state of Virginia at that time.
Man.
And,
did you start with elementary kids?
I did. I taught in 3 schools a day. They were first grade through 8th grade. We called them junior highs. We didn't have kindergarten in 1969. And that came in about 72 or something. I can't remember. Then the middle school concept came in the early 70s. And so there were no more junior highs anymore. And the high schools basically moved to a 9-12 structure, and the middle schools went to the 6-8, and the elementary went to the K-5 when they added kindergarten in. I love teaching elementary school. I left the top high school in Virginia to return teaching elementary school PE and health, and everybody thought I was crazy.
That was my next question to you. I love it. I don't think I'd go anywhere else with the.
Well, yeah, it took me about 10 years to figure that out when I started teaching, and I was at this high school 6 years, and man, we won every district title, but we won every district title. We won all the regional titles but baseball, and then we had about 3 or 4 different state titles that the teams won. No school in the state ever did that. That was Douglas Freeman High School in Richmond. And then, you know, I got to coach 4 sports and get paid for 2, and $50 for the sport for the season. They were real different times. But, you know, you made less money, but who cares? We were happy, and went 11 years before we had kids. We were slow learners, and we raised 2 great kids. One of them who is a health and PE teacher today in Atlanta.
Nice.
And the other one is a nurse practitioner in dermatology, so she's in the health field as well. But the big thing I'd say, Eric, is that in our profession, we've got to teach people how to do it, so that they don't, and I'm not trying to put you out of business, but I go out and ride my bike. I'm 73. How many 73-year-olds do you think I see out there on a day when I'm biking? Yeah, I went out those 2 days last week. It was like in the high 30s, low 40s here. You just put on clothes and go, you know. Now it's colder on a bike, no doubt about it. And when you turn back into that northeast wind that was blowing, it was really cold. But still get the workout in because I know what it does for my body. And I quit this stuff of higher intensity training years ago when I finally realized, and my studies showed me that work is mass times distance. I got a big mass. If I move it, I've done the work. Now, is it going to train my heart as hard as a higher intensity workout? No, I know that, but I'm not chasing parked cars anymore. I'm out here trying to get out through the woods, get up and down hills, go to the beach, not drown when I go in the ocean anymore. But I think a study I read when I was young said that 90% of adults do not know what to do and how to do it.
90%.
I really believe that that's an indictment of our profession. Now, whether they have the motivation or not, that's a whole nother thing too. But when I talk to people now in my age group, we're all the baby boomers. They're not exercising because they don't know what to do. They're going to pay and hire somebody like you to help them get through it if they have the money. If they don't have the money, then they die young.
Mm-hmm.
I want to die young in old age. That's my goal.
I remember back in the so when Dr. Bennett used to be surfing too when I had him as a college professor.
Every morning before you got to class, I'd already been out and been for a trip.
That was awesome. Man, that stat you hit me with 90%, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
think that.
Yeah.
Now I haven't seen a modern study on that, a recent study. I don't know whether it's our profession's too afraid to take a look at what older adults are saying or not, but it's real obvious to me that when I go to a school, like I go by the elementary schools just to go by and look, see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a teacher the other day I know real well, and this person said, well, man, I got all these stations set up out here, and they can space socially distance, and they can do X, Y, and Z, and I can just run them out there, and they take off. Well, she has educated them to know what to do, but there's not any imparting of knowledge because they're just coming out on the playground and running around at the stations, which is better than running around and running loose. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Which I see that at a lot of schools.
Yeah, but that always disappoints me there, and that's part of the reason.
It all starts when you're early. I mean, society has changed, and the last 30 years, you know, with the technology, the internet coming to everyone, you, unlike me, grew up in a whole different period in history, not knowing what life was like without the internet. Well, what do you see now? Kids sitting around watching their phones. I see people, I know you know this, I see people at the beach walking down the beach, holding their phone with their earplugs in, or just holding their phone and listening. And I'm going, why did you come to the beach? Don't you want to hear the birds? Don't you want to hear the ocean?
Right.
Do you know there's an ocean out there?
I know.
My favorite thing, I used to fish all the time by myself, Eric. You know what I liked? I liked being out there, listening to my boat going along through the water and the waves and the birds and watching the birds and nothing. But people can't do nothing. I mean, it's not in our DNA anymore to sit around. Well, I shouldn't say that. Plenty of people sit around. They're going to sit around and watch TV.
Yeah, I know. It has changed
everything.
Yeah, I mean, I got kindergartners with better phones than me, which is crazy. They'll ask me, they'll be like, Coach, what do you got? I'll be like, oh, this is a 10. They'll be like, oh, that's old, Coach. And they'll pull their phone out, which has been ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, it has completely hurt. I feel like I feel that it's going the wrong way. But the other thing and this is another reason why I started doing this, was that I wanted to put something on social media that's a positive instead of seeing all.
Yeah, I don't say those statistics to be negative. Like next one I was going to say is this is the least fit generation of young people we've ever had. It's the first generation of young people that will not outlive their parents. The first.
Wow.
See, I experienced for my 47 years, or well, 50, whatever, when I started in 65, I experienced everybody living longer. That was my experience until just the past year or two, and that statistic has reversed itself. And I've seen that whole spectrum since I was a young person, and like I'll go over to the beach. I'll ride to the beach every day. That was another thing I was going to say. That's why I like to ride the bike. I couldn't run down there and run up and down the beach like I used to, but I'm still going. And how many people do you think I see this time of the year?
I know.
Hardly any.
Yeah, I know.
And this is the ocean.
Yeah.
Now I go see it every day, usually twice a day, whether I want to or not, because I know what it means. And then to have people to be able to just sit without their phone.
I know. Yeah, I was at the bank the other day and I was sitting there and it was a big long line and the computers went down. And so everybody in that line, you could just hear them just bitching and complaining over there and blah. And I was just right in front of the lady. And so to me, I just kind of just started just, oh, what can I do? And I'll start meditating basically. And the lady looked up to me and she's like, man, you have very good patience. And I'm like, yeah, my dad taught me that a long time ago when we used to be out fishing for 12 hours and not catch a damn thing and sit on that boat, and we didn't have this that we could start looking up at, But
I'm not saying I'm opposed to technology changing, because I'm a big believer in that. I use it all the time. I mean, look at what we're doing now. It's just that it has obsessed our country, well, the world. I mean, I was blessed. I got to travel a whole lot to go around the world, believe it or not, teaching dance. And I mean, I've been to Tokyo, Hong Kong, Manila, London, all through England, Austria, through the Caribbean, British West Indies, taught there, down to Mexico, all 50 states. And I've watched this change get into our society. And I've watched obesity, not just overweight, but obesity climb at alarming rates. And another one of my quotes, you probably remember it, is that a pound of fat is a mile extra a capillary. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true or not, but let's just say it's a quarter mile of capillary. What's that doing to your heart? And heart disease still is the leading cause of death, far and above everything else. If you don't die from anything else, it's going to be heart disease. Now, can you do something about that? Absolutely. Your heart is a muscle just like the rest of your body. And I've always said, I don't know, Eric, but you're not going to die from your biceps collapsing on you. You're not going to die from your triceps quitting work. You're not going to die from your gastroc quitting to work. It's going to be your heart. And I go into the gym, I know you do too, and you watch these guys come in, no warm up. When I say warm up, I mean a half an hour to get your body acclimated to getting your blood through your body to your brain. The blood doesn't flow up to the brain automatically unless you increase the demand for it. Well, the brain runs everything. That's the whole deal. So why do they do that? And when I ask them, I go, well, why don't you do a warm up? Well, I don't want to, or it takes too much time. Or I said, well, I'll tell them. I said, you're not going to die from your biceps or your abdominals quitting work. You're going to die from your heart, number one. Wow. So the answer is, this is the why again. Why do you know this? Why do you do the aerobic training? If you can't do anything else in the day's workout, you do the aerobic and forget the weights.
Yeah. The things that you're talking about right now is like, I can see the influence that you've had on me, because it's stuff that I talk about with my students constantly about the heart and things like that. So, I
finally learned that you don't have to do high resistance weight work too. That took me a long time. I mean, I always believed I had to be able to bench press my body weight and 100 pounds plus, which put me right at 300. And I never made it, but I got up to the high 200s. And I mean, most all my life. But then now I would never attempt to do that. I would never do that. I didn't understand repetition and higher reps in the weight works versus the low reps. And you can say, well, how are you going to put on any muscle mass? To be honest, I don't care. I just want to be strong enough to live.
And you know, Dr. Bennett, we had a good friend of mine I had on the show a while back, and he was a bodybuilder, and he talked about his reps were up in the 30 ranges. And man, I started incorporating that into my programs. So I don't never drop below 8 because I'm not an athlete anymore, and I don't need to hit those weights. But what a
That's
difference!
interesting to hear that.
Yeah, he never his was up in 30 to 34 reps, and you should see how he's all natural
And a
bodybuilder.
beast.
Oh my God, yeah. And then when I started incorporating that, because I have been reading a lot about this metabolic type conditioning for putting size on, especially for somebody that's older like me, because after you've worked out for so long, it's not like that progressive load helps to put the muscle on more. It's more of getting into that metabolic region where it's high reps and it burns.
That's really interesting. I'm really impressed at that.
Yeah. I mean,
There was there was a kid that came through about the time you were at UNCW, and I cannot remember his name, but he was a bodybuilder, and he would always wear long shirts to his elbows, and if you looked at him, you wouldn't have noticed until one day I happened to see he scratched his arm or something. His sleeve went up. I went,
dang,
holy Toledo! So, needless to say, I got in. I wanted to know, what do you do? You know what he did? Same thing you just said. And I don't think many people know that. I think that a lot of these guys that go out and try to do 6 or 8 heavy lifts and build their body that way, probably, well, you can do more, you can do damage by overdoing too.
oh yeah,
But I said, well, how many reps do you do? His was 25. He said, never did less than 25. And I worked as a bodybuilder. Now they're a little more extreme than everybody else, but he only worked a muscle group once a week.
dang,
Man, when I
yeah,
looked at him, I'll tell you what, for him, it worked.
yeah. A lot of people they always a little that the doing too much and too much overtraining. I see those guys in the gym all the time, and they'll come up and ask me, and I'll be like, just from me, what I can see what you're doing is you're just hitting those same body parts over and over again. And that's usually for guys, it's the upper body.
Oh yeah,
You
don't
might
want to
want
do
to
any
switch.
leg work.
Yeah.
Don't even mention leg work.
Oh, they freak out. I've already raised all kinds of hell at my gym, but hey, if you're gonna ask me, I'm gonna tell you the truth.
Well,
So
well, that's right. And you know the open kinetic chain theory versus closed kinetic chains, and that's why when I look at coaches in sports and I'll look at drills that they do that have nothing to do with the sport,
no, I
and I'm
know.
going, why would you spend your time with that when you don't have these kids but a short amount of time? It's just like an elementary PE teacher. You're not going to get in 30 minutes in that 30-minute lesson because they're going to be late. They're going to leave early. You know how it is. Got to go
Yep.
to the bathroom, whatever it is. And I got to the position that we got to teach them the whys. Why do you do this? And how do you do it? And then go, and then and only then, if they go home and do it, are you successful? You're not. I don't think the teacher is successful at all if their kids don't go home and practice what you've taught them. So where I lived, when we came to Wilmington, you'll love this. So we pull into this nice neighborhood over in town, and there's basketball courts on every driveway, and our son Zach, he's going crazy because he's a basketball player. He said, "Man, Pop, this is gonna be really neat." Guess what?
Nobody came out and played
They came to the Bennett household. You want to know why?
video games.
I had a basket outside that slid up and down a 4-inch steel pole.
Oh, I remember you telling me about this. Yeah,
When our kids were little kids, I mean, we just started playing with the ball. It wasn't
so they
necessarily
could
basketball.
dunk and everything.
They could stuff it when they were 5 years old because I had it down at 3 feet off of the floor, off the ground, and I would raise that as they grew to keep them. And Zach, when he was in ninth grade, he could do a standing 2-hand stuff on a 10-foot basket, which blew my mind.
Right,
But
so it just gives them a little bit enough to kind of keep them trying to jump higher and higher and get it. And
you got it.
yeah,
Yeah. He ended up 6'5", so he didn't have to jump too much.
Ooh.
But he had a pretty good wingspan too. But my point is, I know you heard that all that developmentally appropriate things in health and PE, and I think we've lost that. A good example is the pickleball, which has taken over the country. When I first started with that, literally back in the 60s and 70s, it was just a paddleball game. Same game exactly. Played it on badminton courts just like they do today because it gave you more space, play more games in a gym or wherever you happen to be. The wiffle ball wouldn't go far compared to a tennis ball or softball, which was good. You could play it off a wall. You could play one wall. And then I had two friends in the state of Washington who called it pickleball for one of their dogs. It took them probably 20 years, Eric, of going to the conventions and marketing with that product before it took off.
It is
You know
everywhere
how it
now.
is today. It's one of the biggest sports in the country.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
reason is it's developmentally appropriate more so than tennis, than softball, than soccer or anything. You got a small court. You don't have to run far. If you play doubles, you're probably going to get on the ball every time. And you can hit it as hard as you want, but it's only going to go but so fast because it's got holes all through it. So to me, that was, in fact, I was responsible for getting pickleball on the state senior games in Virginia when I taught at George Mason, because I got them to play pickleball instead of tennis. Tennis, when you're 65 and older, yeah, there's a lot of tennis players, but if you look at the total percentage of the population, it's very small. I'm into inclusion. How do I include more people and make them want to do what it is they're doing because they can be successful?
Wow.
That's the whole key.
Like you hit like a lot of things that I've been thinking about, especially this year with the coronavirus coming on. So the reason I went into elementary was I was training adults. I had adults that didn't know how to move properly. They didn't know how to run right. I mean, how you
Turn
get it? Yeah,
backwards, sideways.
yeah.
You
I'm
know
like,
all that.
I said PE teacher. I'm like, there's your PE teachers should have been taught you that like since day one. So
Yep.
none of my students will ever if they had Coach Cracknell, they all know how to run. That's definitely number one. And then I teach.
Form running. They
Yep.
do form running. You know what to do with your arms. You know about your leg lift. You know about your weight on the balls of your feet. You know what is, and you and I know this. You go out and watch people run and they're walking fast. Some of them or they're not even close to run, or they're being mechanically inefficient. Why didn't somebody tell them that?
Yeah, I know. Yep. And so there's a lot of things that you've been talking about. So I wanted to get your perspective on this too, because with the coronavirus and stuff, I can't take them to the gyms. Everything has to be outside if it is. Of course, where I'm at, even the fields are not really good condition. So a lot of it has been them standing by their desk. And so what I've incorporated, and I want to talk to you about this, especially today, is a lot of yoga, a lot of working out in place, like that I feel are functional exercises that they have a carryover more of their day-to-day stuff, and then dance is what I've been teaching them. So keeping rhythms and stuff like that, because especially after taking your classes and with you, I've always incorporated dance. And I feel that is huge, 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 huge.
You can't show me a high-level athlete who even though they don't know it is highly skilled rhythmically. Yeah. LeBron James is the most rhythmical execution type person you'll ever see. He is so smooth, you can't see him change tempos. He'll change them right in front of your eyes, and you'll be totally fooled. I still like to watch professional sports from that because of that perspective, because I respect the fluidity of the movement, which is years. LeBron James hadn't gone out and spent a whole lot of time doing off-court stuff. He practices on the court. Michael Jordan was the same way. He practiced on the court. And you can say, yeah, he was gifted. Yeah, they're gifted. They're freaks of nature, just like all sports at the high level.
Right.
But don't discount them, because you can look and see what they do. And you're right, Eric. Every sports skill, well, every mechanical skill you do, lifting weights, doesn't make a difference what it is. They're all rhythmical. And the problem that people have is they don't have any rhythm. And I go and watch teachers teaching. I never see a drum out there to move to a drum, to a cadence. I mean, yes, you move to your own cadence, but eventually a higher level skill is to move to a cadence that you set up, whether it's an even rhythmic pattern or an uneven rhythmic pattern. And how do you teach the crow hop in baseball when it in fact is a step and a hop, which is a skip? Or how do you teach infield drills, which is a slide left, slide right, gallop forward, gallop backwards? You never practice the kids galloping backwards? Well, how do they back up and field the ball?
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I was noticing with my adult clients was that when I pulled them off when they were with me, we always did like more functional stuff. But of course, you have those, I mean, you see them in the gym all the time. They literally go on the elliptical. That's all they do. And they've been doing that for an hour for years. And it basically throws everything else off because they're not really walking correctly. It's more like a
They're not doing any lateral work. They're not doing any backup work. They're not doing any forward work. They're not alternating lead feet. They're not putting turns in, which changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when I got them going down the agility ladder backwards and I'm watching them stumble all over themselves and, be like, hey, don't you think you should work on this a little better? It's got more of a carryover. But yeah, those things that, it's, I was beating on the other day a coffee as my drum. The things that coffee comes in like Folgers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was hammering on that thing until I broke it, but they loved it.
Oh, I broke a lot of drums.
Or I'll smack sticks together, but.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. If there's anything I didn't do, Eric, I didn't expose you all enough to making your own music to work for your workouts. Probably unbeknownst to you, I played a lot of music when you came through as a student, but I didn't share that much with my kids at UNC Wilmington. I believe it or not, I did when I was at Northern Illinois University doing my doctorate. I played in a little group there of my PE majors, and that was sort of where I got started into that rhythm stuff and moving. But it was actually before that at Virginia Commonwealth University. My master's mentor started a dance doctorate at New York University, and she changed my life.
And you're talking about making your own music that's tailored towards your workout, like where it would be the beats?
More taking them on a path. Like if you're working on lateral movement, okay, without any accompaniment, because I just can't do it to a set beat. But a higher level mechanical skill is to be able to execute it rhythmically at a set pattern that you put on a drum or whatever it is, and then alternate and then change the tempos. That there are certain things that are keys. Changing the tempos. You hit a big one a minute ago. The elliptical. They've all gotten into periodization. I know you remember that from your exercise science. That you do the same thing for over and over, forever and ever, and then your results diminish. Just like weights, you do the same lifts all the time for your whole life, which I've done. I'm guilty, but we all are guilty of periodization because we're just too lazy to change it up. And I remember when I first met you at the gym a couple of years ago, and man, you were changing everything up, and I'm going, look at old Eric, he has figured this out. And when we started talking and I found out how successful you were being with your clients, I understood why.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I DJ, and I've gotten back into it. So the best thing about DJing is you can change the tempo. And so, man, that's giving me some ideas already, Dr. Bennett, because I can record right on my thing. It's dance music, so there's no cursing and swearing and things like that you have to worry about, of course.
Yeah.
But man, that's just opened up my head right now. I'm thinking about a ton of stuff.
Well, I don't know if you remember one time I probably said in class, when you go fishing, what do you put on the hook? And you put on bait. And I said, well, what kind of bait do you put on? And students who haven't fished a lot, they're going to say, put a worm on there. I said, oh, no. Only put on what the fish wants, not what you preconceive as what is needed for the fish. It may be the fish never ate a worm in his life and doesn't want a worm. If I go out here on the ocean here, worms aren't going to work real well for me. So my point is the same thing in your PE or in your weight training is you may or may not remember this either, but I spent a lot of time recording music. And first, of course, it was records. They were real hard medium to deal with, but that's what you had to do. And then we had cassettes. Before you'd come to class, I'd be in there with my pencil running through my cassette thing, get it set up perfect so that when it was ready to start, no wasted time waiting for it to start, because you know what that does with your customer. The wasted time, you've lost them. Yeah. So then we went to CDs. The CDs changed everything.
Yeah.
And then I could burn the music, the different tempos that I wanted. But I always understood, and I don't know where I learned this, but when you're working with a client, who, whether it's a whole class or a single individual, find out what the client wants. So if I'm teaching third grade, I'm not going to use a modern group of rap guys playing music for a third grader. I'm going to use what a third grader should probably really should listen to, or is listening to.
Right.
And so for the college, I listen, you don't know this either. I listen to popular music going up down the road all the time in my car, tapping my feet and doing the dance steps or the workout steps on the floor when it was on automatic. And I had a pencil and paper there. As soon as they'd say what the tune was, I'd write it down so I could go back. I was pretty good at finding tunes, and iTunes came in. And so I would start out, when you came into my classes, probably there was music playing that you knew.
Mm-hmm.
Might not be what I liked. That's not the problem. The thing is, how do I get you to want to participate at a different level than you ever had before in a PE class? And I'm still not satisfied with what I see in our PE classes. And well, for instance, a good example are the targeting games. And I can tell you 1972, the AAPHERD, American Alliance Health PE Recreation, came out with a moratorium against dodgeball, which it should have. You probably don't know this. I've been an expert witness in cases related to dodgeball where someone was severely injured. As soon as I would show up, the case was settled out of court because I had my ammunition ready. We don't use human targets, number one. And my professional association, number two, has a moratorium against any kind of targeting game because people are not targets. If you want to do that, go on and be a football player. But that's not what, I don't go around targeting individuals on my bicycle. I don't go around targeting individuals on the beach, running them down on the beach. So why in the world would you want me playing targeting games when I need to know how to walk on the beach, and need to know how to run on the beach? I need to know how to dance on the beach. I used to dance with one of my surfing buddies. You won't believe this. This is crazy. He's another musician. And we were out surfing one day, and he says, John, my daughter's getting married, and I've got to know how to waltz. I said, no big deal. So we get out of the ocean. Here's two old guys sitting there jams with their boards laying on the beach. The two of them waltzing together on the beach. Is that crazy or what?
That's what I love about it. See, and you can care less about anybody that's there. And just so many people are, even my students, that's one thing I try to do is break them out of the shell of not worrying about what other people think. Is the best thing about elementary students that is that all of them dance. I put music on and we have a hoedown because
you do all those drills. You do all your sliding drills, all your polka drills, all your pivot drills.
You love it. And then, as a middle school teacher, it's like pulling teeth to get them to dance because they're too worried about, what their friend thinks about them over there. So, could you imagine having a video, Dr. Bennett, of you on the beach? So how did he do? The guy do pretty good?
Oh, yeah, he was a good musician, but waltz, well, this is off the top. A waltz tempo is a 3/4 tempo, and 3/4 means, and this is why a lot of rock band drummers cannot play waltzes, because they do not feel that alternating lead change from left to right. You have to change that with your sticks. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That being said,
there's not too many beats like that.
Huh?
There's not too many beats like that.
No, they're not. But but for movement, isn't it important that you learn how to change your lead foot from your left to your right?
Isn't that like a cha-cha kind of stuff? A 1, 2, 3?
It could be, yes. It could very well be. And it could be a shuffle, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But they don't see that. But when you even it out into 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that's a structured 1, 2, 3, and you have to change the lead foot every third step. They have, as a drummer, very difficult time with that. Some of them do it real well. Some never get it.
Yeah.
I watch bands, and I'll see a drummer playing in 2/4 time instead of 3/4 time with the rest of the group, and I go, yeah. But that's a great thing that college kids like you, I didn't spend a lot of time like what happens in 6/8 time, what happens in 3/4 time. All I did would be to change up the tempos when you would do your exercises with me, so that you would learn to do whatever that skill was in different situations. I think that's what you want if you're going to go up a ladder of being at a higher level performance. The only way to get there is to change the situation so that it becomes more game-like. Now, we're not all going to go to the game and play at that high level, but we all want to be the most efficient we can be as a human being. And as a result, the people who are not efficient, what do they do? I think I'll just sit back and withdraw. I'm not going to do that because it's too much for me to put on the line to go out there, go down the beach doing a polka step. I mean, who would ever do that? That'd be absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Might help them a whole lot. So they'll go pay a whole lot of money to go do a Zumba class. And I guess I just believe in that we've got to get people to be independent.
Yeah.
And we don't do a good job of that. I don't think. I think the statistics of adults not knowing what to do and how to do it, that concerns me a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. One thing that I mean, I brought in my kind of was forced into after a car accident, but I really feel that is especially the learning expansion of that and bringing world, that worldwide type learning and education and bringing different types of cultures and stuff has been yoga, and my students have literally eaten it up.
I believe.
Yeah, they'll come by me. They always know the namaste and
namaste.
Yeah, and then they'll bring, yep, and they bring their yoga mats and everything, and then I mean it's been great, especially with this time where we are limited with floor space and stuff. So there's a ton of poses they can do right in there, and they came in the other day. They're like, my principal was laughing because they're like, "Coach, look at me," and they're dropping into eagle pose, and she was just flabbergasted at all the things that they were doing. And so it was just all of them down the line. Look, check me out, coach, check me out. It's good to be the coach, isn't it, Dr. Bennett? The kids just, oh my God, they light up.
You never have to go to work a day in your life.
No, so I was just in the school today earlier, and one of my teachers was like, "Hey, you see us going on this remote thing?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What do you think about that?" I said, "I hate it." He's like, "Really?" And I'm like, I'm a student guy. That's why I'm in it, and that's why I love it. And when I'm sitting there on a computer with them, it's not the same. And they miss
it. Well, and see, back to my professorial hat. My thing was teacher education and being an effective teacher, and that's what I studied and practiced my whole career. When I came to UNCW, I was a state level director. My boss was a politician. That was 8 years of doing that, and I left it because I couldn't deal with the politics of it. But I left it too because I just feel like teaching was my calling. In administration, I got in 10 years of doing that, and that was good. But you hit the nail on the head, and that is the COVID has really put a hurting on every kid in this country. Real quickly, independent learning is what online learning is. There's nobody sitting there beside you unless it's your mother or your father, and who knows if they are or not. And it is almost the highest level of independent style of learning. If you remember the styles of learning I used to teach. And actually, the next step would be they don't communicate with you, but they completely self-direct. They're one layer, if you want to call it that, or step below that. If you look on the standard curve, in order to get out to the independent level at 2.5 to 3 standard deviations above the mean, to be independent, the numbers decrease exponentially of the kids who can handle that. So you're wondering why math classes, why history classes, whatever it is, that are being taught online for children are just not going like they should. That's why. They have not been brought through a gradual step ladder to go to that level of independence and learning. And that's why they need you. You're right. You're exactly right. They need you in the gym or in the outdoors or whatever it is instead of you just sitting here, well, okay, here's what we're going to do today, and here's a worksheet, or you can do this, or who's motivating them? There's nobody there.
No.
And you can say they motivate themselves.
No.
They're not that mature. They don't have that skill.
No,
That's a skill.
I think the stats right now are saying that somewhere 80-90% of these kids have an F grade now, a failure rate because of that. And now you can understand why.
Oh yeah, it all, for me, who spent my whole career studying how kids learn, when kids learn the fastest. And here you are, you're the PE teacher, you got a whole group of 25 kids or whatever it is. And if you know that every one of those kids is not alike, they're different. So what we historically have done, and what we continue to do, I'll just teach to the middle, and the ones on the periphery, they better hope they can get it, or they're independent learners, or they're slow learners and they'll never get it. And as a result, they're left behind and not accelerated to move up through the pack and learn at a higher level. It's not easy. Teaching takes a lot of skill, and I'm doing a Bible study with church right now, leading it, and it's brought back to me how much teaching has to be directed to individuals. And I think about my classes of 30 or 70 at the university, or 140 at the university. How much could I deviate from teaching to the middle to meet the needs of those extremes? So I refused to go virtual, which was the easy result, and that's what everybody's done. I went ahead and I lectured, and I got a chair to sit in at the front of the lecture hall intentionally, because I learned that through hospice, that when you're communicating with a patient, I learned this from a nurse. I was at my mother-in-law's hospice bed playing music for her, and she said, why don't you sit down where she can see you better and you can look into her eyes better? And ever since that day, which was quite a few years ago, I started sitting down more in my classes in a desk, in a chair, and I moved around. I don't know if I remember, but I'd go to the back of the room.
Yeah. I'm all over the dang place. I jump in there with them all the time, and oh yeah. And what I've noticed, and too, and this is what I don't understand about PE teachers, because and you were talking about it already, so many of them, they just that roll the ball out kind of thing, and then they don't even participate with them. But when I go in there and I jump in, and I've even noticed it with my clients, it takes them to a whole nother level.
You blew me away at Planet Fitness by your participation. I noticed that, and I said, "Man, that's the way you're supposed to do it." Yeah. Well, I know one of your old guys you followed as a youngster who was with the Bills, a guy by the name of Marv Levy. Marv was my first football coach at William and Mary. He was a quarterback at Princeton. Was Phi Beta Kappa. He's a genius. That's why he did so well. He was out on far end of the spectrum in terms of his skills.
I remember you saying that.
Huh?
I remember you telling me how smart he was, and that no wonder the Bills was so far.
And if you wanted to see a play, he'd get in there at the quarterback spot and run it. and the next guy that followed him just got the Medal of Freedom, Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz was the same way. He was a little skinny, scrawny guy. I'll never forget. And it was nothing to see him out there on the line of scrimmage. Nothing to see him get in a position to show what the path of the ball needed to go when they got the handoff or whatever. I mean, he just. I look back on that and I think, you wonder why these guys were successful. They weren't afraid to get engaged, and I think a lot of teachers, everybody's a teacher. Getting engaged with the client is what it's all about.
Yeah. Now, it's so hard that you were talking about teaching to the individual, especially when you have that many students in a class, So
Very hard.
Before the coronavirus came, my average size classes were like in the 30s, and 30 kids, you're trying to connect with each and every one of them. But what I found that works for me, and that which keeps my behaviors down with my kids, is I sit with them at lunch. I talk to them outside, and as much as possible, and it's still very difficult to do. But you're right, And I had Bobby Ventura on here, which is new head coach of the men's swimming team at UNCW.
Right.
We talked about the same thing. You know, how do you motivate? Because, you know, I'm like, I was always somebody that called me out, especially in college. I knew if I was not in it, I would talk crap to the guy that I was playing against, so he would talk crap to me, and then that would take me right where I needed to be. But other people, that doesn't work, you know, getting in their face and stuff. And you know, that's why as a coach, it's kind of hard to find those things. And he gave me some really good tips on there too. But definitely when you find that thing, because everybody's different. And,
Oh yeah.
And that's the reason why I have this show on. So, and I think I was telling you a little bit about it, Dr. Bennett. The reason I call it the Daily Reps podcast is not just the repetitions that you're doing in the gym, which we should all be doing, but you know, what are the daily habits? What are the things that motivate people? You know, and that's why I'm like, you know, I did a little preview of you before on my live Instagram thing of telling people, you know, who I got on the show, and just, I mean, just the knowledge, just the tidbits of information that I've gotten through you over the years of that I've used constantly. I'm sure all of your students that have, and now you can see where you've kind of picked up things on. I mean, you've Lou Holtz and Marv Levy and Guy, you know, like, and surrounding yourself with the best of the best, you know. And that's the second reason I did this podcast, because I always call it, I'm out here nowhere, North Carolina, you know.
Yeah.
I really am nowhere. And I'm like, how am I supposed to connect with these people that are, you know, as motivated or want to take it to the areas that I want to? And you know, those are things I wanted to talk to you too after the show about, because I've been really trying to get into our. Now, Dr. Bennett just wrote, how many books have you written?
Oh, I don't know about it. I think 12 or 15.
Yeah, which is crazy. Just with how the amount of work that goes into one.
Oh,
Those are
20
things.
years on my first one.
20?
20. It's been in print since 1995.
Was that the gymnastics one that we had?
No, it's actually my dance book.
Oh, man. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. How did you get into dance, and how did you get it to the level of being, you're in Hong Kong this time, and so you start as a youth?
Actually, when I grew up, it was pretty popular behavior for kids in some areas to get into cotillion, which really is not what cotillion was originally, but what it was something that your parents sent you to go learn manners and how to talk to the girls and guys and dance. And at first, of course, that wasn't me. I was John Bennett, the athlete, and forget all that other stuff. But I had a strong musical influence from my family, my dad particularly, and my mom danced. When a big band tune would come on as a swing tune, she grabbed me I remember at 10 years old in the living room, and I'd be dancing. I'm going, what are we doing? And I you know, anyway, long and short is, went all the way then from there to into my master's, and my last teacher started the dance doctorate at New York University. 40 years older than me. I was 24 and she was 64. I thought she was ancient. Now that I'm almost 73, I don't think she was ancient. But she would wear, at 24, Eric, I know you remember, we're at the peak of our life. Shoot, I was running better. I was stronger. I did everything. And she wore me out. And I said, what's this woman got? She participated in everything. I'd like to go back now and watch videos of her teaching. We didn't even video back in those days. This was back late 69 to 72. And I said, if I'm half as active as she is at 64, my life will have been a success. I'd like to say I made it, but I always followed that credo, which you're talking about on the movement in the classroom, the interaction with your kids, and being a positive person. That's another thing I hadn't touched on, but positive reinforcement goes so much further than negative reinforcement. Back to studies in the classroom show that about 90% of the reinforcement in the classroom is negative. So what we have is a whole group of young people who are turned on to responding to negative reinforcement versus responding to the positive reinforcement. And to become intrinsically motivated, where I go out on my bike because I know it's going to make me feel better. Not only do I know it, I like the feeling. That's with weight training. It's with swimming. It's with surfing. It's not work. It's just you go out and do what you know is best for you. So the dance then developed, and I stayed involved in my professional association. I was the second man in the history of the National Dance Association to serve on its board of directors in the 70s. That was significant because then I made contact with people all over the United States. And I just filled a really unique niche, which was in the social dance area. I studied folkloric dance. I taught it. I traveled to countries and learned it. If I was in Japan, I didn't go to Japan just to teach American style dance. I went there to learn everything I could learn from the Japanese, so that when I go home, I can add that to my teaching skills. I'm not sure everybody does that or wants to keep learning. This thing in my Bible study came up. Number one, you're not too old. You're not too young to lead, and you're not too old to learn. I like that. So I'm still learning, and I think you just do it all your life. If you're not, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the dance. Then I would get on programs with state, district, and national level every chance I could with dance, some sort of dance. And then I would take kids to these conferences to perform for the conference. One time I took a group of public school kids to Texas, and it was the Southern District night at the conference, and they did a performance for the whole convention. Isn't that cool? Then they came and they taught with me, and then lo and behold, here's this guy in the session who's with the United States Amateur Ballroom Dance Association. This was like when I was probably 32. He said, "How would you like to go to England and dance?" And I said, "How much does it cost?" I'm a school teacher. He said, "No, I'm going to pay everything. I'll put you on the faculty, and we'll take a group of kids." I'm going, "Okay." So I went over, took the kids and competed some in the pro-am stuff, and never looked back.
Man, that's awesome.
Isn't that wild?
And we said you were like Hong Kong?
Been taught in Hong Kong at an international school. It wasn't an American school. It was an international school. And there were 43 different nationalities in Hong Kong in the school.
See, my cousin lived there for a while, and she said they had no problem dancing. They'd be dancing on the street. Like you go to a park and they're just going to town.
Well, I went there wanting to know if they get up in the dark to work out, that was the first thing. And I know you've heard that they do. They do. And then the next thing I wanted to know, they're big ballroom and Latin dance people. The Asians are. So I wanted to know if they get up and dance in the dark, before they go to work. They do. And they got all their recorders and everything. So they're out there in the dark in the blacktop playing their music and dancing. And you just go,
what a way to start your day. What a way to start your day. I mean, if you think, I always say, if I'm dancing every day, it's a good day.
That's right.
Whenever you're dancing, you just feel good. And that's what, I always try to, if it's like a 2-minute thing with my students where I just might throw a song on real quick and be like, let's go nuts. But just, man, that alone.
When you look into other cultures, you'll see, look at the New Zealand rugby team and their, the thing the thing that's all rhythm. It's a dance. Yeah. There's a bunch of men doing this warrior dance before they go against their competition. If you go to South America and look at the Brazilian warm-ups that they put into soccer, they're all samba and salsa rhythms, which for you and I as gringos, we're not too good at that. No. And so I'm always this guy in terms of rhythm. I look at things and diagnose them in terms of rhythm. Like, how are you doing that fielding of that ball? How are you teaching that kid? Are you just saying, go over there and get the ball, what you want them to do? Or are you actually teaching them how to shuffle their feet in a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 or whatever, in a rhythmical pattern, practice that pattern with a pivot? I mean, then the tempo changes when you go to the pivot. And then can you slow it down and teach it? Can you speed it up? Boy, to me, just enhances the learning.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I want especially after having you and you breaking it down into, and that's what really connected with me. I'm sure probably with you in the beginning of connecting dance with that it's all athletic steps.
Yeah.
And to me, because I think when people were just like dance, I'd be like, but then when you've made that connection with me, I'm like, whoa, and then practicing it. And I remember my ex-girlfriend had a daughter, and so she took dance. And of course, when she came home, I'm like, teach me. She's like, you would do it with me? I'm like, I'll do it with you. And then when she taught me how they do those steps, and I'm like, wow, now I can see why they just showed you that, because man, it got me to stop and change directions super as efficient and graceful as it could be. And
You come back now though from an athletic position versus a dance position, and what you're doing is taking the dance steps she did, and you go, oh my gosh, look at that skill. I've seen that skill a million times on a basketball court. Yeah. Same Tujarte, when they went to the aerial dunking contest, those are all dance steps, every one of them.
Oh yeah.
Learning to take off of a different foot for a basketball player is really difficult. You know that. And right. and there are only a few players, in my opinion, that are really smooth at that. Mm-hmm. Jordan was one of them. He could take off of either foot, shoot with either hand. Now, yeah, but wait a minute. He's up there at 3.5 standard deviations above the mean. Can I teach a kid who's back in the middle of the pack to do that? Maybe not at the same level, but I'll tell you one thing. If you never, ever put them in a situation where you ask them to change that lead foot to do the skill, they'll never learn it.
Right.
But they'll refuse to do it. They'll constantly go. If you're a right-handed dribbler and all you know is right-handed dribbling, you won't dribble left-handed because you're terrified.
Same with the soccer player with his right-footed. Yep.
Yes, you're exactly right. I had my son, because I'm a PE guy, learn to shoot either hand on a jump shot.
That's what me and my brothers with my nephew, right from the beginning, all the time. You take 5 cracks with your right, then 5 with your left. You know, really? Yeah, that makes a huge. And I have my students constantly doing that, trying to change them up. So, yeah, I remember just having them up against the fence in a soccer ball, and that's because I remember when I got to this point of being serious in soccer, and I was like, man, I better get better with my right foot, my left foot, and just kind of just catch up with that. But starting them young, that's why I like elementary, and start working on them younger.
And then if you go to racket skills, you got the same situation. Well, you ever going to work on the backhand? Mm. You may end up hitting more backhands than forehands, particularly if I know you're weak on the backhand.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, when I used to go to my ex's daughter, her dance thing, I would sit there and literally write down the cues and I was like, man. And so now I started reading a lot of, dance instructors' books, because their cues were so. And if anybody watching this too, to better athletes and stuff, that the dance cues there of changing feet position and stuff like that are wow. When I started incorporating them into mind training and other ones, huge.
So why wouldn't you then take those drills and have kids execute them rhythmically and put a drum's perfect to the pattern of the feet? You can slow it down, you can speed it up, just like at a game situation. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is you can change the execution of the skill for the student just by sitting there and playing your drum, and I don't see it happen very often.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
I could just see I'm so, you can hear my New York voice comes out. So when I'm with my students now, all the teachers are always complaining how loud I get, but man, if I brought that drum in there too, Dr. Bennett, oh my God. They'd be hate, but I don't care. I'll do it anyway. But usually I take them outside.
The other way to do it is, which takes a lot of time, is to find the music that changes the tempo and gives you.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I remember that I heard a CD that you gave me. One of the coolest, I guess, assignments that you gave us was where so we broke off into groups. You had us pick a song. And then you gave us dance steps and movements that we had to incorporate into the song that flowed with the song. And man, that was really cool. So we choreographed our own stuff. That was one of my favorites.
It's a higher level of learning when you get kids to the point where they can go to the level of creativity on their own, versus me, the teacher, or whoever coach, telling you how to do it. It's no different than I look at still at athletics. I'm going to try to take my kids to get to the point when they're on the field, they can make a decision to resolve a problem, how to score best, how to defend best. Because I'm on the sidelines looking at 11 kids, 5 kids, 9 kids. Sure, I can be helpful, but the best is teaching to that level of independence, which I feel like that's what our public schools ought to be doing, and they're not doing, so that they're going to want to leave school and exercise.
Wow.
I go down to the state park here as much as I can too. I don't see but a few people.
No,
It's the most gorgeous place, beautiful paths, hardly anybody there.
no. Yeah, I mean, there's Jones Lake over by me. I talk about that with all the teachers. Yeah, huge, beautiful. I mean, there's 8 miles of pathways back there in the woods, and you as being a hunter, I don't hunt, but I like to get out in nature and everything. And I was teaching a yoga class actually out there on the water, but there was never anybody there. I'm just thinking how awesome this place is, and the same thing. I think you notice it everywhere, and I mean I know, but one of my main goals of my students, I always say, I'll tell them, you'll look back at this and you'll be like, Coach was right. And now I see why Coach taught me this, and because I mean, even in the gyms, you're like, man, where is everybody? This, there's one gym out here, and there's really nobody in it, and man, it's crazy to me. So. And people always say that to me. I remember when I was my clients, we have these big weight loss challenges, and they're like, you know what? But Eric, you love working out, so it's easy for you. I'm like, whoa, wait. I would rather be fishing. You'd rather be sitting doing. I can think of a million other things I'd rather do, but it's not that. And it's the same thing that you talked about. It's the results that get it and that make it worth it. And that's the one thing I try to do with my students, is to get them enough. And it's hard as an elementary teacher because I only have them once a week. And, in order to get results, at least 2-3 times a week for most people, they'll see their strength gains up. So it's things like that you talked about, those movements. And I'll say, hey, look where you're at now. We do a lot of balance stuff. That's where I like the yoga. Look where you can do now. And so they can see, oh yeah, all right, now that I know that I put the work in and practice, it did make me get better.
Well, a big movement in the U.S. for back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s was a thing called outdoor education. And it was always looked upon as a frill because we didn't have time to do it. We didn't really have time to teach. It's a very indirect way of teaching, of letting kids discover things on their own. And lo and behold, here we are in this lockdown thing, and I'm seeing this outdoor education reappearing, and I'm going, it never should have disappeared. I mean, why? When I taught at public schools that didn't have a gym, that was good news. I didn't like it at first, but it made me stay outside all winter. And my kids knew that if it was cold, you bring your cold weather clothes. I was in Richmond, Virginia then, and it got cold. We had some snow. They loved snow. But you know what they like even more? Sliding in puddles.
You know what? And now I can use that one of my students, because I get them outside all the time too, and they'll be like, "It's cold out here." I'm like, "This is nothing."
Yeah, being from New York, it's nothing.
Yeah, it's 62. It's 62 degrees out and sunny here. You're saying it's cold, but before, when I first started teaching at this school that I am now, I used to call them my little vampires, because I'd take them outside, and it was like they're like, the sun, like, yeah, it's either too hot, too cold, but now it's like they'll ask for it. But it leads me to believe that, again, a lot of them are in this house 24/7, and they're not getting out too much. So, and we know the importance of vitamin D and the importance of having the sun.
You got to integrate the health concepts. That's another place we've really failed. For instance, my wife came home from the doctor and said she needs to start taking some vitamin D, and I quickly pointed out to her chagrin, you only need 15 minutes outside in the daylight and you get your whole total dose of vitamin D for the day. So if you're staying in a classroom all day long and then you go down to the gym and you stay in the gym, you don't accomplish that. And then later on in life, you build up deficits, i.e. my wife, and people just like her that don't get outside as much as you and I do. So they have vitamin D deficiencies. And then the next thing is the osteoporosis with women as they get older. You know, you don't have to worry about that with school age kids, but they do need to understand that their bones grow along their lines of stress. That meaning that you got to do weight bearing activities somewhere. And if you're sitting on your chair watching the computer or watching TV, you're not doing any weight bearing except on your rear end.
Right.
So now my wife, they look at osteoporotic levels of bone density, and they have these big fancy machines, and it costs a fortune for you to check it out. As men get to their 7th decade and 8th decade, we then begin to lose bone mass at the same rate as women. Interesting. And our bodies begin to take on more of the characteristics of men and women, and we do become more neutral. We lose, like we automatically as men get more muscle mass because we have higher levels of testosterone. Well, as you get older, trust me, the testosterone is going to go down. And what happens, you know, I don't have big biceps anymore. My legs are skinny as a rail, never were skinny. I don't ever remember that. But that's what changes as you get into your 7th and 8th decade, which is another reason to know what to do in order to counteract that as much as you can, like just range of motion, putting your shoes and taking them off. I mean, that sounds pretty easy to the younger person, but trust me, at my age, it's not as easy as it used to be. And it even reinforces to me more and more, Eric, that what you're doing with your kids is, I guess, maybe lifelike. I used to use the word game-like. They like game-like better because, oh man, I'm getting ready for soccer, you know, or I'm getting ready for baseball. But it really is lifelike because it's less than 1% of all the kids that ever make it to the professional level in baseball, football, soccer. And look at them, and I'm not opposed to spending money on kids being in organized sports, but I would rather they get outside and ride their bike and go down to the state park and run around the trails. Or I grew up running in apple orchards because where I grew up in Shenandoah Valley, they had a lot of apples. So we ran the apple orchards. It was great. I loved it. Up these nice hills and down the hills, you know, just like upstate New York where you live.
Oh, yeah.
Except it wasn't as cold.
No. I was up there in the summer, and so as a teacher, and the good thing up there is that I'll start training people up there during my break, but it's too cold during the winter times. That's why I'm back down here. But in the summer times, oh my God, it's beautiful. The Great Lakes, and
I love Great Lakes.
There was a park right there by where my parents' house in Buffalo. You can see the Niagara River right there, and I'd run that hill. Man, I'll tell you what changed that hill, especially at my age of running, but not being so banged up of running up and down that hill was and I try to incorporate it. I know it's tough here, but a lot of my clients' workouts because it doesn't.
Oh yeah, we don't like hills down here.
No, there's none down here, but it doesn't pound you. And I was like, man, nothing. You know, kept getting faster and faster, but I mean, that's a really good way to incorporate running without taking that beating. It was a nice, grassed hill, nice big hill that you run up, and I was just like, you see Canada and everything there. In fact, I filmed one of my workouts there for my students during the virtual things before we first started. So what I was doing was I'd go to different parks every week, and I'd film a different thing there. So the students, I'd say, hey, here's a park that's open. You know, if you get outside and, there's nobody here, to try to get them outside.
Well, you again, back to physiological principles, kids today have no idea about fast and slow twitch muscles. They don't understand that if you want to have fast twitch muscles, you got to train them. And if you don't train through intervals, you'll never increase your speed. And you're only going to increase your speed, but so much because genetically you're endowed with X number of high twitch versus low twitch. You and I are different on that. We've done plenty of muscle biopsies to prove that. And I'm into LSD, long, slow distance at my point, mainly because my fast twitch don't work like they used to, but it doesn't mean I couldn't benefit from fast twitch training.
It's great. Yeah, and that's huge. And so I was just having a conversation with somebody just recently about that myself, and I was explaining to them, you know, when you get into the older population of people, like that explosiveness or fast speed is think about getting up off the toilet. It's slow. It's harder to get off of the toilet. Or if I'm bending down, if I'm lunging down to my right and grab something, and I remember when I first started hearing about this, I was at a strength and conditioning seminar I think it was in Nashville. And one of the top ranked type trainers was there. And this guy, man, of course, if you go to speak to any of these things, you have to have a ton of data to back yourself up with. And he was showing basically training, I think he started at 70 to 90-year-olds. And the progress that they made, Dr. Bennett, was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys were lifting more than me. Like some of their benches, so done with correct technique and done properly, with the amounts of muscle mass and things that they were gaining from it. So it's not like you are at a point where people always believe that. I think
Yeah,
probably,
I
when
would
you get
agree.
older, there's no use.
Yeah.
And when in
No,
fact,
you're right. I'm a living, breathing example, man. We're going to move to a retirement center in a year and a half, and they're going to have a big gym and a lap pool. I can't wait
nice.
because I'm going to get back on the weights as fast as I can, and I know that I can retrain and expand those cross diameters of my muscle fibers again. Not the same, but to a level that's going to allow me to live a higher quality life at my age. I'll be 75 then, and quality of life's what it's all about.
No, I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. And one of the wonderful things that you spoke about here that I have just kind of been hammering home is that the lessons that you learn through in sports and working out in the gym, they are not just game, they're life skills that carry over to life. It's just with repetitions, why I named this show the Daily Reps.
I like it.
You can see yourself when you're in the gym and you go, all right, if I put the work in, now I can do a little bit more. And the
Right.
carry over that into life of, when you put self-discipline into things and dedication into things and enthusiasm and passion like that you speak about a lot, because that's what I like to bring to my students. I always try to gather myself if I've ever been, especially when I was working with the special needs kids and the behavior kids, I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and do yoga before. My mom thought I was nuts. She went off on me when I was taking care of her. I said, Mom, I need to go in there with nothing where I just leave everything behind. There's nothing that I'm going to bring with myself, my baggage, to these kids at any point in time. And they love me for it. And that's why they talk to me to this day. They ask me for advice, and I love that for them. And, I try to, again, live by that as much as possible so that way it rubs off on them. There's no other way than to be that role model yourself. And you have been huge
Thank you.
had a type of impact. But to me, health and fitness is, if you want to exceed in everything in life, you've got to have that. That's the foundation. If you're not taking care of your own self, you don't have the energy, you might be sick, but and people don't consider that point, but that's what, to me, the starting point. If you want to be a CEO of a business, if you have expectations to go here in life, then start to that point.
It's back to where we started with the entheos. And you said something at the beginning about point fingers to do this or to do that, or why you don't. I always remind people, remember when you point a finger, there's 3 of them looking back at your face. And it is about responsibility for behaviors and then it comes down to choices. You have a choice. I don't think I'm going to exercise today, or yes, I think I will. But that's where you and I have to sell them on the benefits of why it is that you work out. You want to lower your cholesterol? Exercise is a fantastic way. You want to lower your cholesterol? Learn how to do push-aways from the table. You want to lower your cholesterol? Learn what the best food is that you should be eating. You want to lower your weight level? Then you got to cut your caloric intake down. I mean, you got to cut the caloric intake down, and you got to burn more calories. Well, you're not burning any calories during this COVID sitting around in a chair all day. You've got to get up and get going. And I've been blessed. I've lost over 30 pounds during this COVID, and I feel great. I'll probably start surfing again next summer.
30, like that's what I'm talking about. Or most people are. It's the one thing I thought, and Dr. Bennett, I was putting all this stuff out there. I lost a lot of my clients, of course, because of the
Sure.
coronavirus, and I felt in that woe is me kind of point. And I'm sitting there watching Netflix, and of course, especially when the pandemic first hit, I was kind of scared, what was going on. And then after a month of putting weight on and me not doing, I'm like, you know what, forget this. And
Yeah.
then I started working out and doing pull-ups off a picnic area that's parked by my street, and finally was able to talk to some of my clients into coming out and being safe with it. I've set their stuff up on a dry
Well,
erase board.
it
And
looks like we're going to be shut down for a while longer. I'm thinking about writing another book. Um,
that's what
I'm
I want to talk to you about, because I feel like I wanted to go down that street
Well, you
now.
need to. You have enough experience now, and you need to start putting it together. And I can give you some thoughts on that. We can talk about that. Because we're going to move, I'm going through a lot of stuff in the house, and like I got a whole drawer of dances from around the world, files from every country in the world, because I researched them and contacted their embassies, and I got all that info sitting there, and it's not doing anything. And I thought, maybe I just need to get it out and get back onto the writing again. Um, I, I've done some things in arrangements of music, but I haven't done any more with the combination of the music and the dance as an exercise thing. And
I
I
like
need to
that.
focus on that more.
Yeah, man, that's when you started mentioning that to me. I mean, it's got me. When I get out the thing with you, I got a lot of stuff I need to write down.
You
That's
got
what
to
I
write
love
it down.
talking to you about. But Dr. Bennett, what do you feel like during what are the habits that you have that you incorporate daily that keep you moving forward and growing? And are there different, like so here we've had people talk about, I'm on the same thing where we have a smoothie in the morning, and we had a couple of yoga guys, of course. Meditation has been a big thing, but what are the things that keep you inspired and motivating and growing as a person?
Well, I'll go back to where I first started with you, which you probably remember was the Pentagon of Health, the five-sided shape that came from a guy by the name of Delbert Oberthofer in the 60s. And his thesis is that it's all maintaining a balance in your life: physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual. 5 things. And those 5 things the Center for Disease Control later took and put as their comprehensive health model and made it 11. But I can't remember much past 5. So 5, what they basically did was they broke down that Pentagon into 5 different parts. However, the whole thesis remains the same, which is balance in your life: physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual. And spiritual is the bottom of the Pentagon. It's always hard to talk about spiritual when I talk, because they go, well, you can't be talking about God and Jesus and
Right.
church and all of that. I would always say, you can be Muslim, Hindu, not believers, the list goes on. But you do need, according to everything I can read, is you need a spiritual component in your life as a base for balance. So yoga fits right in there, man, for contemplative prayer and centering in your life. That's what it's based on, which I love that. I think that's neat you're doing that. So for me, I'm back leading a Bible study at church now, which has really changed me a lot. I'd gotten away from those readings and things that are really helpful to you in your own life. And then the mental, certainly I want to keep a balance in knowing what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't think, as we mentioned earlier, they know. The social, they tell us that probably 80 to 90% of what we communicate is nonverbal. Well, that comes right back to you and me. I mean, if you're way overweight, how are you going to tell a kid you need to exercise, or you need to be eating X, Y, and Z? So, that's a huge one as well. Physical, mental, the emotional. They say that 1 out of 3 people in the country needs clinical help.
Yeah.
I believe that. And this COVID thing, man, that's going to get even bigger. You watch. So, how are we going to handle that? And here it comes back to you and me again. Don't you exercise as an outlet? Don't you use it as a relief for emotional stress reduction? I mean, see, and then you create in your body. The only way to create HDLs, high density lipoproteins, is through exercise. It's not from what you eat. So if you don't have a good differential on HDLs to LDLs, that's when you get into trouble with your heart and cholesterol buildup and all that. So you got to know the physical, why you do it. Physical, mental, social, emotional. Physical, mental, social, emotional, and then spiritual. So I got all 5 of them. That's the only way I can remember it, and that's what I try to practice in my own life is that balance. But those components become very important, knowing, and again, I go back to where we started with adults. By their own admission, they don't know what to do. So easy thing to do. I think I'll just sit out.
Right. Yeah. Now you go self-reflect, Dr. Bennett, to the point where you're like, maybe every once a month you'll look at those components and see, you know, how am I doing in those, you know, or where am I at?
Daily.
Yeah, daily. Yeah. You know, it's so if you notice, so the Daily Reps podcast, did you see our symbol or my symbol?
No, I did not.
It's the components of health.
Ah, I love it.
It's the circle. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
it's so for you to say that is icing on the cake, because that's what I drill into my students' head, because it is huge. You know, I remember going through a rough patch when I first moved to North Carolina, and had a friend of mine that was going through a life coaching thing. And the first thing he made me do was in his own way, after I started drawing this thing down, and then he's like, but worded differently. And I was like, I see where you're going with this. And so that's why I love as being a teacher, because it always gets me myself to focus on it, because I'm constantly teaching it anyways. And that's what I love about
you teach what you are. And I've always believed you teach what you are. And back to this Bible study has reinforced to me again that throughout history, whether you are Christian or what you are, all the great leaders in any movement were great teachers. That's how they got people to follow them. And if you're not a great teacher, they're not going to follow you anywhere. It's just like a leader in the military. They got to be a great teacher. They got to know who the enemy is. They have to have done their homework. They have to know the best way for the attack to defeat the enemy, whatever it happens to be. And I think everybody, that includes you and me, when we're working with other people, it behooves us not to be up to date on what and who we are, so that we can help others that we come in contact with to maximize their efforts. I'll tell you what, it's not easy. You know, it takes you personally have to have a lot of knowledge in order to do the things that you're doing. And you're constantly expanding that. You're never too old to learn.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I find for myself is putting myself into positions of being a teacher, and that it forces me to motivate myself, and putting myself around good people and things like that. And there are things in my life. I talked about this before, when I never swam hardly any time in my life. And then after a very difficult time in my life, I did the ocean rescue lifeguarding thing. And I literally walked up, one of the guys working at a triathlon store, and my manager pointed out that the head guard was there, and the boss. And without hesitation, I walked right up to him and I put my hand out. I said, "Hi, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Eric Procknell, and I'm going to be on your next ocean rescue lifeguard." And I remember him sitting me in the stand one time, and he said, he was talking about that, and he said, "Remember you did that?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I used to think you were a cocky prick," and you know, and he said, "Now I know why you did that." I said, "Yeah, because I rode my bike morning, and I didn't have a car at that time, because I'm that type of person that if I say it, I'm gonna back it up, you know." And so I know.
I agree. You probably don't even know, when I was at the university, you probably saw my bike in my office. I rode 20 miles 5 days a week.
You were honestly God, Dr. Bennett. And then I see you with your surfboard out on the beach when I was out there lifeguarding and stuff. And so
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then go and compete in your East Coast Championship, and I scored the points that the Wrightsville Beach group won the East Coast Championship, and then went on to California.
Yeah, the best. We were talking about this before on the phone, before we got on here. The best of the best. So I'm talking about not just the competition with the best lifeguards in the United States at that time. And Dr. Bennett helped contribute to it. And your daughter was I think she came on after me, so she's a little bit younger than me.
Yes, she is. I'm losing your vocal.
Well, is it the PE teacher, Dr. Bennett?
Say that again.
Your daughter who did the lifeguarding, was she the PE teacher?
No, that's my son.
Oh,
He's a dermatologist.
oh, okay. So, Dr. Bennett, like over the years, or maybe even now, what are the things that inspire you? Is there a book, some good books that you would recommend, or is there something you're reading now, or maybe you've watched? Or what are the things that have inspired you throughout these years?
Boy, what a question. It probably goes back to something I really miss now, which is contact with people who are high level in the field. As I look back over my career, when I was in Illinois doing my doctorate, there was a lady there who was an exercise physiologist who was the first woman to serve on the National Exercise Physiology Council in history. And man, was she knowledgeable. And she was actually from, Sharon Plowman was her name, and her brother lived and grew up where I grew up. And so we were connected right away. And 5 years of listening to her was very, very helpful. And then I've always been one of those people, as I've gone through, that look to find people around them who are definitely more knowledgeable than I'll ever be in this process. And so now, and then I want to learn everything I can from them. I'm the same way with music. Now I want to learn everything I can in music. So I seek out people with higher level skills to play with people who have. I always liked to exercise with people that were more fit than me because it was a challenge. I wasn't obsessed with competition, but I did like competition. And I think that, like, when I was in my 60s, Eric, I was still running intervals on the track. I mean, it wasn't because I did like them, actually. I loved them, but I knew, see, here we go again. I knew the principles of being able to run faster. I was still competing, and I was you got to look out ahead 20, 30 years. There's a young fella from Brazil who I talk to occasionally. He's in finance and runs his wife's dental practice. And he's always saying, Dr. Bennett, you have to plan ahead 20 years, 10 to 20 years. You have to have a vision. And I'm going, yes, Daniel, I need that. And so Daniel, financially, in his 40s, has probably already got himself financially independent. And I look at this like fitness. He's fit financially because he planned. And I think that's what you're talking about is, what do I do now? I planned, maybe unbeknownst to me, by surrounding myself with people who are really good. Gannon Baker played basketball here. He's trained all kinds of professional basketball players. I still communicate with him occasionally. He'll come into town. He's kind of like you. He wants some new sayings to put in his clients. And so we'll sit down and we'll do just what you and I've done. But I learn from him too. Don't think I don't absorb everything you say. And don't think I wasn't watching you when you were in the gym, because I want to see what you're doing as you motivate and interact with your clients, because you are having success. I'm probably not going to do any client work anymore. I don't know what the 10-year plan is totally now, other than here's where I am, take care of myself, be healthy, do the things I know that'll build up my HDL, that'll cut down my cholesterol, that'll increase my blood circulation, that will help me to have a higher quality life at this point in my life. And that's not easy. You got to work at it. I mean, you can't quit. You don't get a chance to quit. I don't know the word quit. That's not my vocabulary.
Yeah. My mother was talking about retirement, and she said to me, "Oh, it'll be so nice when you retire and you don't have to do anything." I looked at her, I'm like, yeah. And then she saw my face and she's like, "You're not gonna be doing anything." I'm like, "No, Mom, I can't." And
well, Eric, I worked 47 years officially. Yeah. And I will tell you, I probably should have kept on working. Retirement, it is when people go and sit and do nothing. And that's not me. Retirement for the last, I guess it's been 4 years now. That's why I'm ready to make a change. And my friend Daniel, man, he got me back on this planning stuff. I do think you have to have a plan of the big picture down the line, not just for today or tomorrow, but 6 months, year, 5 years. For instance, my own finances, I ran into a guy in Raleigh when I was in the State Department. He was in a Treasury Department, helped set up the retirement system in this state. He helped me in 1984. In 1984, when the first 401s came out, he said, you need to get one of these. They're going to be the next best thing going in investment for people like you in the educational field. Eric, I have 2 of them. One of them has quadrupled in my investment 4 times. Now, that's because I stayed in for the long haul, and he taught me and explained to me about the plan for the future. And as a school teacher, because that's basically what I was as a university professor, I didn't make much more money. It's all in the planning. And now this young kid, Daniel, he's got me back into thinking that way. You've got me thinking again about the physical principles of fitness, and I've got to do a better job. So I'm probably going to get out there and go ride my bike in the rain.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of what happens to people like me, and there's going to be a bigger place for people like you in personal training to work with people like me, because my age group, the people don't know what to do.
No.
And you have a great foundation from what I've observed, and when I talk to you, that far exceeds anything you got as an undergraduate. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
We just didn't give you much on aging and older adults and where we're all going to end up.
Yeah. That's when another statement you said that we're hitting home, where you're like, I've trained everybody from 3-year-olds to 90. I'm like, that's where I am at. Yeah. Everybody in between.
It changes your perspective. I mean, I still remember Neil. I trained her for 4 years at George Mason University. We had an older adults project, got $250,000 a year. Back then, that was a lot of money. And had it for 4 years. And I was in charge of all the activities, basically, which was fine with me because I loved activity. That was my name. And but it gave me a very unique opportunity to watch 94-year-old Nell for 4 years.
Right.
And to watch some others for 4 years. And we collected a lot of data on them, which was fun too. I like that. I still like to research.
Oh yeah. I'm constantly nosing the book, or no TV, and I'm always watching informational type stuff. To me, that's what I want to listen to and spend time doing. And to me, it sounds like it. And I know through a lot of our conversations that we had when you were teaching and stuff, that you've come across some. I mean, you've mentioned a few names already. Some people that are just very inspirational and motivating, and then you take you through that type of level where you want to better yourself. And we talked about a friend of ours that you knew too, that had passed away recently, that was one of those type of people that I worked at Ocean Rescue with, where just in his presence alone, that you just made you want to better yourself, because he was that type of person that was always going after what he wants. And when I sit, even if I just hear your voice, Dr. Bennett, for 2 seconds on the phone, it gets me far. God's honest truth. It does, just from the impact that you had on my life, and in that short amount of time. And I hope that I am able to do that with my own students and those that have come across me. And that's something I'm going to work on until the day that I die. And I appreciate that a ton. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to me about this. I feel that you've dropped a ton of knowledge on people and some valuable information. And I'm sure there's the amount of time that we could keep talking for a long time. And I know you have a lot more tidbits of information to drop, and would love to have you back on the show in the future. And maybe after you rewrite that plan down, Dr. Bennett, we can talk about that a little bit. So
well, we're on a journey. And I think last thing I'd say, Eric, because you got to go too, know that the plan is in a state of flux, that it's constantly needs to be revisited and revised I don't know about you, but I had a mentor way back who said, "Do you have your 5-year goals written down?" I said, "No, never ever thought about it." "How about your 10-year?" "No." "How about 20? No." But guess what happened after that? Wrote them
The
down.
hard way.
Wrote them down, put them in my drawer, like the guy said, and revisited them every 6 months minimum. And I do think you need a guideline on your journey to help you, because then you tend to make fewer tactical errors or mistakes. But you're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but you need a plan. And Daniel, this finance guy, Dr. Bennett, what are you going to do in 10 years? 10 years, I may not even be alive.
Yeah, right.
He said, "But yeah, you need to be planning." I said, "Well, that's why I'm going to go to this retirement center and try to change my life again." We'll see.
Yeah.
It's been great.
To me, that's huge, serious. Like, I wish I could show you my war room right here. I see on the wall right there.
Cool.
You ever call it the War Room? It's a Christian movie, I guess, where a girl basically has her room where she plans everything out. That I didn't even know about it until one of my clients told me about it. And every day I wake up and I go in my war room and stare at me right dead in the face.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm a huge believer in that, and that's why I said, look, you learn the hard way when you don't have a plan of action and you're just kind of going willy-nilly and you're wasting time. And I was on the phone with my older brother this morning talking about it, and it's, man, I wish when I was younger I realized the importance of time. It really is super valuable, and how much time you crap away. And that's why I don't watch TV. If people are on here wondering why. To me, so it's been 5 years now. I haven't touched it. I just think it's a waste of time. And
good for you.
Even especially being a Buffalo fans, and the Buffalo Bills are finally playing good.
Really well.
So at least I'll YouTube them or I'll watch.
They did beat Pittsburgh this week, man. Woohoo! Yeah. I loved it.
Please. The only way, Dr. Bennett, I said, if I die and you're going to stick my body out there so everybody can see me, because I'm against that. I said, if the Bills win it, if Buffalo brings home a championship, and then I want a big smile on my face. Like, so when people look at me, they're like, yeah. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't grow up near there, but I do have a lot of relatives up there in that area.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I was in contact with a cousin this morning, lives in Manlius, New York, and she and I communicate pretty regularly. She wanted me to know it was only 12 degrees up there this morning. I'm going,
yeah, that's what I look. When it's cold down here, I'll flip over to Buffalo and I'll be like, all right, it's not so bad. But Dr. Bennett, I just want to let you know again, man, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day.
My pleasure.
Man, I enjoy always talking to you, and you've always been I brought this up. I remember talking to you in the gym, and you're like the mayor. You have, so many people, and they'll come up to you, and it's not like you're in a hurry, and you always give them the time of day and your full attention. And man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that so much, and all the things that you've taught me. And I want to stay in touch with you, and because I mean, just the stuff that you had brought up today about the different aspects of bringing the rhythms into the teaching and things like that. And then again, I want to talk to you about. I had a lot of stuff already written down about writing a book, and so that way, you going through it would help me tremendously, and that would be awesome.
Let's talk.
So thanks again, Dr. Bennett. I'll be in touch soon. So thank you.